Amerigo Vespucci. Amerigo Vespucci, the man who named the world. Florence, 1454. The city breathed ambition. Stone towers pierced the sky, bells rang over crowded markets, and the minds of men stretched farther than the walls that contained them. This was the Renaissance, an age where art, science, and daring thought collided. And in a modest Florentine home, a boy named Amerigo Vespucci was born into that collision. He was not raised with a sword or a sail, but with numbers, stars, and ideas. As a child, Amerigo listened as scholars debated the shape of the earth, the paths of the heavens, and the limits of the ancient world. His education was precise: geometry, astronomy, cartography. While other boys dreamed of glory, Amerigo studied how the sky moved, how distance could be measured by the stars, how the earth itself might be far larger than anyone dared imagine. At the time, Europe believed it already knew the world. They were wrong. The age of discovery begins. By the late 1400s, the Atlantic Ocean was no longer a boundary. It was a challenge. Ships pushed westward in search of Asia, gold, and glory. Christopher Columbus had returned claiming he'd reached the Indies, and Europe celebrated. But Amerigo Vespucci did not celebrate. Working as a merchant and navigator for powerful Florentine and Spanish interests, Vespucci studied ship logs, coastlines, and celestial readings from these voyages. Something did not add up. The lands described were too vast, the coastlines too long, the rivers like nothing Asia had ever known. So Amerigo did something few scholars dared to do. He went himself into the unknown. Between 1497 and 1504, Vespucci crossed the Atlantic multiple times, sailing along the coasts of what we now know as South America. These were not gentle journeys. Ships were fragile, storms merciless, and death always close. Waves rose like mountains. Wind screamed through torn sails. Men prayed, cursed, and clung to wood as the ocean reminded them how small they were. When land finally appeared, it was not what Europe expected. Endless jungles spilled toward the sea. Rivers so wide they tasted fresh miles from shore. Stars overhead that did not exist in European charts. Vespucci observed everything. He measured latitude. He tracked the sky night after night. He spoke with indigenous peoples and noted cultures utterly unknown to Europe. He saw animals no scholar had ever described. And slowly, quietly, a realization formed in his mind. One that would alter history. This was not Asia. This was something else, something entirely new, the dangerous idea. To claim a new continent was to challenge the greatest authorities of the age, Aristotle, Ptolemy, even Columbus himself. But Amerigo Vespucci was not driven by pride. He was driven by truth. In letters sent back to Europe, Vespucci wrote with clarity and confidence, "I have discovered a continent in those southern parts. More populous and extensive than Europe, Asia, or Africa." He called it Mundus Novus, the New World. Those words spread like wildfire. Printed and reprinted, translated and shared, Vespucci's letters captured Europe's imagination. Readers were stunned by descriptions of endless lands, unfamiliar peoples, and a hemisphere that ancient geography had never predicted. While Columbus still believed he had reached the outskirts of Asia, Vespucci had gone further, not in distance, but in understanding. The map that changed everything. In 1507, a young German cartographer named Martin Waldseemüller sat before a massive map of the world. Inspired by Vespucci's writings, he made a bold decision. If this was a new continent, it needed a new name. He labeled the southern landmass America, the Latin feminine form of Amerigo, a tribute not to conquest, but to comprehension. The name stuck. Maps spread across Europe bearing that single word, America. What began as ink on parchment became identity, destiny, and history itself. Amerigo Vespucci never demanded this honor. He may never have fully realized what had been done in his name, but the world would never forget it, the final years. In his later life, Vespucci became chief navigator of Spain, responsible for training pilots, correcting maps, and ensuring future explorers would not sail blindly into the unknown. He brought order to chaos, science to ambition. No throne, no empire, no armies, just knowledge. Amerigo Vespucci died in 1512, quietly in Seville. No grand monument marked his passing. No ceremony captured the weight of what he had done. Yet his legacy was already written across oceans, continents, and centuries. Epilogue. He did not conquer the New World. He did not rule it. He recognized it. In an age of swords and crowns, Amerigo Vespucci changed history with observation, courage, and the willingness to say what others could not. Because one man looked at the horizon and understood. The world was far bigger than anyone had imagined.